comparing and ordering fractions with the same numerator and same denominator. So our objectives for the day are to compare and order fractions, state the relationship between the numerator and denominator, and explain how this relationship impacts the relative size of the fraction. And we're also going to articulate that as the numerator increases with a constant denominator, the value of the fraction increases as well if the comparison is of the same whole amounts. So on your tables you have printed out 4 different chocolate bars. That's what those are representing. And then you've got keys and air rods and some other materials. You've got your recording sheets. So do you remember how yesterday we used greater than or less than symbols to compare numbers? They're right up there. Today we're going to use those numbers, or those symbols, to help us order fractions from the least value to the greatest value.
Okay, so in order to do this, we're going to do a group activity. And so everybody has sheets of paper that look like this. Can everybody see them? And so these represent chocolate bars, and the highlighted parts represent the pieces of the chocolate bar that you were missing. So make sure that everybody has a piece of paper. And now I want you to pay, oh, I already said that, just kidding. Yeah, and so let's look at if this is Nicole's chocolate bar. And so she has 5 shaded pieces, and so that means that she's missing 5 pieces of chocolate bar, okay? And
so your challenge is to look at your chocolate bar and write down the fraction for your chocolate bar. Write down how many pieces of the chocolate bar you have over the whole. Do you have a question?
Yes. Just for clarification, the shaded part is not the chocolate bar.
Yes,
the part that's missing.
So the white part
that
is
doesn't
the pieces
exist.
of the chocolate bar.
Thank you, Ms. Warren.
You're welcome. And when you're finished writing down your fraction, so the fraction of the chocolate bar you have, you are going to turn to your shoulder partner and compare your fractions. So decide which one is bigger and which one is smaller. And make sure you write down your fraction so that you can keep track of all of the numbers listed. After you've written your shoulder partner's fraction down, compare your fraction with the partner sitting across from you. And then after you've done that, write your fractions down and compare your fraction with your last friend in the group. At the end of this activity, you should have a list with the smallest fraction and then the largest fraction, all the fractions in between. So once everyone's fractions have been compared, work with your table to put the fractions in order from least to greatest. Does that sound good?
Yeah. So the group of 3 might have to modify that a little bit. Back of your recording sheet. So everyone, you can write your fractions in order on the back of your recording sheet or anywhere that you want. Is that a recording? My fraction is 1 6 is less than 2 6.
Okay, what's your fraction? I have 5 6.
Okay, so you're really smart.
Wait, are we supposed to be comparing all kids using greater than less than?
So we're going to use the symbols that we used yesterday, greater than, less than, and equal symbols, to make a list of which fractions are the smallest and which fractions are the biggest. So when you compare, who are you comparing with right now?
Well, now Casey.
So when you decide whose is bigger, then you can use, what symbol would you use? The greater than symbol or the less than symbol?
If mine is bigger, I would use the greater than.
Yeah, so you're going to make a comparison there, and then at the end, you guys are all going to work together to make a list.
Wait, Sheldon, choose 16.
Oh, and then 5. Yes. 5 6. Narrating
This has the
yeah.
only has 1 chocolate.
6 together we can make a whole bar.
Yeah, and your fraction. Great.
So we did, so like all of the chocolate bars, we did 6 parts. And then we just started the denominators, how many there were. And then we did
I looked at them and saw.
Well, I knew that if you had because fractions you know, it's all that. One sheet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 whole. So it's 1.
I would say combined.
Oh, right. Correct.
same.
And we just put them in order from least to greatest. So Clara had the least, and Lucy had the least.
We saw that the bottom was all the same, so we went in that way.
I saved my chocolate for later. I don't have any of that.
And did you each individually compare with one another, or did you just write them out?
We each talked, and then we came together as a
I feel like, well,
It was really weird because I just did this. And came back. I was just like, I'm more like,
She decided which fraction was the smallest. That's an interesting strategy. So
and this one is smaller than all of this together.
So is that one bigger or less smaller?
Wait, oops, I was looking at the wrong thing. I'm silly. This one is, I thought this was chocolate, but this is nothing.
So what fraction would this represent?
This is 5 are chocolate out of 6 that could be chocolate.
You're right. So it's 5/6. 6 is the whole because there are 6 chocolate pieces. Great job. And friends at table.
Thank you.
It's not, but it was harder. But like,
all right, back to me in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So now that all of our chocolate bars have been compared and ordered, who can represent your table and tell me which friend had the greatest amount of chocolate and how much did they have? Clara?
Lucy had the greatest amount of chocolate because she had 5/6 of her chocolate bar.
Yeah, that's great. So how did you know that that was the greatest amount of chocolate?
Well, all of our bars were broken into the same number of pieces, so we could ignore the bottom and we just looked at the top, and Lucy had the biggest number on top.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Claire. Going off of that, who has a friend at your table who had the least amount of chocolate and how much did they
I
have?
have a question. What does that mean that you can just ignore the bottom? Because you have to look at the number on the bottom.
So what Clara is saying is that, let's look at her number here. So she said that Lucy had 5/6, right, Clara?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everybody had the same number of pieces, which is represented by the denominator. So this is the total number of pieces. And so what were the other number of pieces that you guys had at your table? 5, 6.
3, 6, 2, 6, and 1, 6.
Thank you. And so, Emma, you see how all of these are the same number because everybody had 6 total pieces in a whole chocolate bar, right? But because the chocolate bar was broken up in different pieces, so Lucy had 5 left, and then somebody had 3, somebody had 2, and somebody had 1. So Claire said it's easier to just overlook this. We do need to know how many pieces are making up the whole, but she says it's easier to know who has the most based on the numerator, which is the number at the top. Okay. So which friend at your table had the least amount of chocolate, and how much did they have?
Nicole had the least amount. She had 1/6.
Yeah, so great.
So I was noticing that you all were saying that the denominators of the fractions are the same, and what we were talking about is that this is the number of pieces within the whole that you could have had, but the numerator is the number of pieces that actually each person had. So I was wondering if you all,
So I'm wondering how you decided whose was the biggest fraction, because we had some friends saying that they just looked at the top number. I'm wondering if any other friends had a different strategy. that helped them decide who had the biggest fraction.
I saw that Katie's group did it in an interesting way. You guys like used the actual chocolate bars and like laid them out. Do you want to come show everyone?
Sure. Do we want Post-it notes?
Sure, you can.
That'll do it.
So we lined them up and we compared the amount of pieces that each one had.
Visually.
Yes,
Yeah.
visually.
Yeah, so we could see that there was only one white space here, but there were 2 here, 3 here, and 5 here, and we used the, like what we could see from the chocolate bars, and then we wrote each one out on a Post-it note like this. And then after we placed them in order of how much white space least to greatest, we then put the fraction underneath it, if you can see it. And then that's how we knew what the order was.
Yeah, so that's a really effective strategy. When our fractions have the same denominator, so the same number on the bottom, you can compare the numbers on the top, or you can also represent it visually. So I like how my friends counted how many white spaces were left and then compared them visually. Great job, guys. Thank you for sharing. So I'm wondering if Casey could share her chocolate bar up at the front with me. Casey, what number name did you give the chocolate bar pieces you had?
We called it 3/6.
Okay, well, I have another chocolate bar here, and I'm wondering if you could compare the two. I'm wondering if you could find a number name for this chocolate bar. That's on with the pink.
Well, that would also be 3/6
How'd you know that?
because there are 6 pieces of chocolate and you have 3 of them. So you have 3 out of the 6. This chocolate bar is just bigger than this chocolate bar.
Amanda, do you have a question?
So, that chocolate bar is so much bigger than the other one, and that is so
I
not
know.
fair.
I know, that's what I was about to ask Casey. Casey, I'm wondering which chocolate bar you would rather have.
Definitely the one.
Definitely the pink one, right? But they're the same fraction, right?
Yes.
Did we give them both the same number name? Give me a guess if we gave them both the same number name. Yeah, so we gave them both the same number name. When we're comparing fractions, it's important that they have the same size hole. Or it's important to notice if the holes are different sizes. So here we had 2 separate holes, so we can't compare those fractions. It's important that we notice the size of the hole. So what we just saw makes a big difference when we're trying to compare fractions, right? Thank you, Casey.
So let's try another problem. And I'll read it up. It's the one you have it on your recording sheet. You flip it over so that you all can see it. So this problem says, our friends Nicole, Emma, and Clara were riding their bikes to school. Nicole rode 3/6 of a mile, Emma rode 3/8 of a mile, and Clara rode 3/4 of a mile. So what we want you all to do is to be able to take the tools at your table and represent what this problem is asking. So we want you to all order the distances that our 3 friends here rode to school. You can use any of the tools at your table or you can sketch it out. And we want you to order them from any grade. Oh, that's what you can start.
that I am the weakest one.
And we figured out that Sarah rode the most final 1/4 because the next one is the 86, which is the same size as 2
Can you show me? I want to make sure that we don't make the same mistake that we could have made with the chart. Are we comparing it to the same whole? And can you show me
That's 189.
I added an extra quarter.
Oh, smart, clever, Shelby.
I'm trying.
Why do you have these flipped over here?
To show that they didn't ride the speed, but it's still equal to.
If you were going to give a number name to the distance of each of our friends' what number name in order would you give it? If you look,
Is 1/2.
It's also the biggest number of the top, so that should be right? That's the biggest number that's given.
I see that there's.
So if they're each going to call me, and now how are you going to represent how you're going to cut? About 1 mile. Oh wait. So this is Clara, this is Nicole, this is Emma. Well, Nicole wrote 6, so there's 6 pieces. 4, 5, 6. Nicole wrote this. Emma has 8 pieces.
Also in Nicole's house is 36 of them. They're all getting
Of a mile, just finding different distances from her house and Clara from her house. I got confused.
Yeah, no, I just want to understand how she's
I live far away.
So Clara won, but Emma wanted to put it there for comparison.
Like eggs. Like it's no, because there's a 3 eggs too. So that one's out. But it's out of 4 and 6. Well, yeah. So,
But like, why do you? How do you know that?
because that's where you compare this to one. So you have to have
My grandma was so you're drawing.
So the rest because I knew I need source because they're like I couldn't find any rocks that were 6 of this.
I think if I do
This purple one
but you can't. No, they keep falling on. It's like 3 miles. I
Because he said if one is separate, the same
So they have different sizes even though they have the same numerator?
I'm sorry.
I mean, that would be like.
It's kind
Sitting there like, and then it's like her grandma yelling to get more time. I would go right out.
I don't really know what that is. I've heard people talk about
Okay, so let's write our number names up on the board so that we know exactly what we're talking about here. And one thing I was noticing as we were walking around is that a lot of you used the tools to represent what you were thinking. But I was noticing in the back corner over there, we had some people who were actually writing out with their number names the things that they were thinking. And we were wondering if someone from that table could come up and show us.
I will show my work. This is my handwriting. Okay. So, first, I wrote it this way. 3/4 is greater than 3/6, which is greater than 3/8. But then, after further discussion, I remembered how last time, since the bottom numbers were all 6, we could just look at the top numbers. And this time, all the top numbers were 3, so I decided to just look at the bottom numbers. So 4 is the smallest number, so I put that first. So 3/4 is less than 3/6, because then 6 comes after 4. And then 8 comes after 6, so then I put that one last.
So I really like what you're thinking there. I was wondering if anyone has a strategy, a different strategy that got them to a different answer. Emma.
We're both Emma. Okay. We use this tool to represent the distances, and we think that, or I think, that it's the exact opposite of the last one.
Can you bring your tools up?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like them.
Okay, so we decided to put this one down so we could remember what an entire mile looks like, so we don't get confused. And then we know that Emma went 3/8 of a mile, so that's 1, 2, 3. And then who else? I think that's Nicole. Nicole went 3/6 of a mile. And Clara went 3/4. And then, do you want to say the one?
Yeah. And then Miss Horn came over and was helping us, and we were looking and we saw that the 1/6 looks like it might be around a half. So then we looked and we added in the 1/2 and saw that if we combine these two, it made a whole. So then we figured out that 3/6 is the same as 1/2.
Thank you. So when we're looking at this strategy here where they wrote up the numbers, or they wrote down the numbers with the numerals and had the fraction bar, we're talking about being able to compare. In the first problem, you can just look across what's in the numerator because the denominator is the same, and you can just order them based on what the order of the numerator is. But in this one, we are getting two different strategies, giving us two different answers and kind of opposite answers. So when we use just the denominator to order it, we are getting an opposite answer when we use the fraction tiles. And I was wondering if anyone could help us
if it has a smaller denominator, then it's a bigger fraction.
What do you mean by that?
Because 3/4, in the picture they have, 3/4 is the biggest one. And it says over there that 3/4 is the smallest, but it should be the biggest.
Yeah, so when we look at it with the fraction tiles, we're seeing that 3/4, which has the smallest denominator, is actually the biggest fraction. It has the longest distance in this context. So, does anyone else have an idea of what we think in general? What does a denominator represent in a fraction? Lucy.
How many parts make up the whole? So like for the 3/8, it takes 8 little pieces to make up the one whole.
Right, so if we have 3 little pieces, if we're looking at 8s here, if we have 8 small pieces, the pieces themselves are smaller. So if we have the same number of pieces, the actual distance is going to be smaller. I really like your thinking. Thank you.
That is the end of our lesson. To clarify, that's not the end of our whole lesson, that's just the end of the part where we
Oh, I left you up there, sorry.
James Robert and James Craig and my dad. But my dad knows my mom, so she was and his brother knows my
Okay, before, everyone, we still need to do feedback for the group. We're gonna start with, we're gonna do glow and grow. So positive feedback for the group, and then we'll do growth areas. And I'll let you guys call on people.
I thought you guys did a really good job of picking like a diverse number of strategies and making sure that you like represented everybody's strategy on the board so you could see different ways that people did things, and also like by putting them all up on the board you were honoring all of them as like valid ways to like be thinking about something, even though like not all the strategies were necessarily like right.
I also, just going off of that, I like that you guys picked one, like Amanda's, that wasn't necessarily accurate, so then you could go back to that and show how you could do it in a different way. And I also thought it was good that with, like, for the context of your problem, you, like, used our names to, like, make it more, like, personal with us.
Kramer. Going off of, like, how you used Amanda's strategy, you really, like, did a good job of picking out, like, a common misconception. Like, that's something a student would do very easily, and so that's why that's something really important to point out to the whole class. I also like to give you props for just doing fractions because fractions are difficult. Lucy.
I thought you guys did a good job. I know Destiny got the question about that, like the denominator, and then it was revoiced again later in the lesson with Saley. So I thought that was good because that's a really important concept, and you guys brought it up and then brought it up again, so like students were really thinking about it.
So I will start with the grow and then go to a glow. So I really liked the scenario that you provided. I thought that was really great. The only thing that my group was kind of discussing is that maybe just a little more clarification, such as because we got clarification from one of y'all when you came over here, but just kind of like Nicole rode 3/6 of a mile from her house, because then we were like, oh wait, like they only rode 3/6 of a mile, whatever, which wouldn't really change the answer, but just kind of like it's one less thing to think about. And then for a glow, this was already mentioned, but I really liked how y'all were valuing student thinking, and even when you were coming around just kind of asking us, okay, why did you do that, or what do you think, or what about this? Those are really great back pocket questions.
Going on to that, I think it would have been real. I like how it didn't say from their house, but I think if you put who lives the closest to school or who lives the farthest, then it would have connected it to the real world scenario that the math problem is creating.
Anyone else?
I I also thought like the chocolate bars were a cute way to like introduce it and kind of get us used to looking at the fractions. I did think it was a little confusing to like the shaded versus non-shaded, because we were all like, wait, like which part is actually the chocolate and which part is not. So I don't really know. I guess maybe if you had like one being brown, then it would.
Yeah, we were considering cutting it when we realized that you wouldn't be able to tell that it was Madison's pieces. That's it.
I could tell you did a really good job of like planning for lesson flow in your sequence, because like you started out with an activity where it was all the same whole and like had a common denominator, and then when you brought Casey up there, you were bringing up the idea that not all wholes are equal, and then we moved into like different denominators, so I thought that sequence was like useful.
I don't know if this is just because I already know fractions, but when I first saw this, I thought it was like pretty clear which ones were like less and which ones were more. But I think, you can't really like put your mindset in that of someone who doesn't understand fractions, if you understand fractions. So I think it was like a good scaffold, but maybe it could have also been cool to just like pose the problem and then have the kids like draw it out. So it's less like, more thinking and less like support. But it just depends on the kids. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and go. So I liked how, I don't remember this from your lesson plan. I think it may have changed, but maybe I'm just not remembering. I think you guys did a good job of picking different models. So the first one's more of like an area model, and the second one uses more of like a number line. So I like that you brought out those conceptual differences. I also thought it was pretty clever how you were able to pick out Amanda's to come up. I guess I think if I was to do this again, I would try to bring Amanda's thinking in more, like elicit more of her thinking as the conversation's going on. Maybe do like agree, disagree, and have a sense before you do that whether or not you're going to have some students in the class agreeing, and then bring in the student who had the misconception into the conversation. And then the last thing, and this is a super small thing that's not about the math but about the pedagogy, is when Olivia, when you were giving those first directions, it was super fast and like a lot in one thing. So when you're doing it with kiddos, you'll want to break it up. Cool. Anyone else have something they're dying to say? And do you guys have anything you want to say? I was supposed to have you guys do your own first. Sorry. Do you want to do your own now, or?
Anything else to say has already been said.
Okay.
I think if I were to do this last part again with the like different representations of the riding the bike problem, I might not start with the numerical representation, just because we tend to think in terms of like concrete to more abstract. And I think it would have been helpful to say like, did anyone get something? So that it felt like, I think the way that I structured it then was like, someone put something up, okay, that's wrong, let's find like the other strategy that was the right one. And that was not really how I intended to do it, just kind of like, that's how it came out. And I think it would have been helpful to say like, let's put up the correct strategy on the board, and then ask anyone like, so that it's valid to be like, I didn't get that, and like, let's question it. And I think that might have been a little bit more supportive of student thinking and like changing that. But
yeah, I think it also would have been helpful for us to have like anticipated more specific student strategies, because I know for me personally, like I feel like we were thinking about it as we were going, like as we were writing our plan, but as I was like walking around, I was like very surprised to like see some of the strategies that were being used. So I feel like it would have been helpful for us, like as we're explaining on the board, to have already anticipated some of those strategies.
Cool. Great job.